Did you know the British once tried to divide an entire Indian state literally just to stop people from protesting? Look, I know you're probably totally stressed out right now, just staring down the barrel of your 10th standard board exams. And yeah, Chapter 18 can definitely look like this endless, intimidating wall of names and dates, but take a deep breath. Actually, take two, because this isn't just some boring list of facts. This is the epic story of the freedom struggle. We're talking high-stakes strategy, betrayal, and just incredible, mind-blowing courage. And today, we are going to crack it wide open so you can walk right into that exam hall with absolute confidence.
So, welcome to this explainer. I'm going to be your personal exam hacker today. Our one single goal for the next few minutes is to basically guarantee that you secure maximum marks on this specific chapter. I've combed through your textbook, I've analyzed the previous year's official key answers, and I've distilled the whole shebang down to exactly what the examiners are desperately looking for. Okay, here's your ultimate three-phases blueprint for today. We'll hit the Indian National Congress, move on to the moderates, dive into the extremists and the Partition of Bengal, and finally look at the revolutionaries. Let's jump right into Section 1, the Indian National Congress. All right. Before we meet the main cast of characters, let's just map out the chronological shifts so you have a solid mental anchor. Way back in 1885, English-educated Indians realized they needed to fight for their rights constitutionally, which led A.O. Hume to establish the INC. Fast forward 20 years to 1905, and boom, we get the explosive Partition of Bengal. Right after that, in 1906, the extremist phase kicks into high gear. And finally, by 1911, the British are actually forced to withdraw that partition. Keep this basic timeline in the back of your mind as we go.
Moving to Section 2, the first phase, spanning 1885 to 1906. We call these guys the moderates.
Think of the moderates kind of like that one student in a group project who wants to do everything perfectly by the rules, right? They wrote polite constitutional letters, and honestly, their demands are pure gold for your exam. Let's use some mnemonics here. For the key leaders, just remember DMSG, Dadabhai Naoroji, M.G. Ranade, Surendranath Banerjee, and Gopalakrishna Gokhale. And for what they actually asked the British for, remember CDEP. Cut military cost, develop Indian industries, improve education standards, and poverty alleviation programs. Seriously, memorize those two acronyms and you've got an instant perfect answer.
Now, the moderates weren't just quietly writing letters. They were actually brilliant analysts. And this brings us to a massively high-weighted exam concept, the drain theory. I want you to do a quick mental whiteboard walkthrough with me for a second. Imagine a giant one-way pipeline connected directly from India's treasury, literally pumping wealth, raw materials, and resources straight into England's bank accounts. Dadabhai Naoroji and the moderates used hard scientific statistics to prove this systematic looting was happening, and they called it the drain theory.
But, over time, frustration really boiled over. The polite letters just weren't working. So, a new group emerged within the Congress who completely rejected this mild attitude. They actually mocked the moderates, famously calling them political beggars. This right here is a highly tested comparison question on your boards. The moderates appealed constitutionally and trusted the administration, while this new group, the extremists, wanted aggressive, loud action and protests.
Which brings us to Section 3, the absolute flashpoint, the Partition of Bengal in 1905.
So what triggered this explosive event? Well, Bengal was the absolute epicenter of anti-British protests. To crush this, Viceroy Lord Curzon orchestrated a partition. But wait, stop right here. This is an absolute trap set by examiners. If a board question asks why Bengal was divided, do not just write that Lord Curzon did it for administrative reasons. No way. That was just his fake excuse. The real reason you must write to get those marks is this. He divided East and West Bengal based on Muslim and Hindu populations to create differences between the two communities and crush the intensity of the anti-British freedom struggle. It was a classic, textbook, divide-and-rule policy.
All right, Section 4, the second phase, dominated by the extremists, from 1906 to 1920. That partition completely enraged the country, and it led to the famous Lal Bal Pal trio. That's Lala Lajpat Rai, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, and Bipin Chandra Pal, along with Aurobindo Ghosh, violently opposing it. Their massive counterattack was the Swadeshi Movement, which called for a total, uncompromising ban on Western goods. Now, what's genuinely brilliant is the strategy used by Bal Gangadhar Tilak. He knew that to really fight the British, he couldn't just rely on a few educated politicians. He needed the everyday common people. So he utilized religious and cultural functions, specifically Ganesha Chaturthi and Shivaji Jayanti celebrations, to bring massive crowds together and inspire nationalism. It was just a genius way to organize a huge freedom movement completely under the radar of British authorities. Tilak also declared one of the most iconic lines in all of Indian history: "Swaraj is my birthright and I will get it at any cost." And independent India was their ultimate aim now. Just having good administration wasn't enough anymore. Quick exam tip: dropping this exact quote into literally any board exam answer about the extremists will instantly impress your examiner. It shows you really truly know your stuff. Speaking of the exam, if you see a 4-mark question asking you to explain the role of the extremists, look no further. This is your ultimate cheat sheet. These are the exact 8 value points straight from the official examiner key. You write that they were against the division of Bengal, started the Swadeshi Movement, banned Western goods, aimed for an independent India, prepared the common people using religious functions, and utilized Tilak's newspapers, the Kesari in Marathi and Maratha in English, to publish revolutionary articles. You hit those 8 points and you secure full marks. Bam, done. Moving into Section 5, the rise of the revolutionaries, the armed struggle. Because you see, even the extremists' aggressive protests weren't enough for some people. This final group dreamt of a totally free India, but they strongly, fundamentally believed that the British could only be thrown out through violent means and armed rebellion. These are some of the most iconic figures of the era, guys, like Bhagat Singh and Chandrasekhar Azad. They didn't bother holding public meetings. Instead, they established underground secret branches in India and abroad. Organizations like Abhinava Bharata and Anushilana Samiti secretly collected money and trained people in the use of bombs and firearms. They faced terrible, fatal consequences. Many were given life imprisonment or hanged, but they became a massive, undeniable source of inspiration for the entire nation.
Now, when we talk about revolutionaries, we almost always focus on the famous names, right? But let me test your knowledge with a highly specific, absolutely fascinating leader from Northeast India. Do you know who was the young woman who built an army and led a fierce guerrilla war against the fully armed British for 14 years?
Let's find out in Section 6, Guiding Liu's Rebellion.
Her name was Gaidan Liu. When a Naga tribe leader named Jadanong didn't allow women in his youth army, Gaidan Liu gathered the women of the Northeast, joined his Haraka religious movement anyway, and integrated her forces to fight the British. Her timeline is an incredible story you absolutely need to remember for the test. Step 1. The British capture and hang Jadanong in August 1931. Step 2. Gaidan Liu immediately steps up and takes full charge of the army. Step 3. She wages a relentless guerrilla war. In just 8 months, she has the British completely taken aback, with entire villages secretly cooperating with her. And finally, Step 4. She is tragically betrayed. A traitor named Dr. Haralu gave her location to a British officer named MacDonald. She was imprisoned in 1932 and remained in that jail until India finally won its freedom. So look at how brilliantly this whole chapter connects together. If you want to summarize the entire evolution of the freedom struggle in your head for the exam, just remember this one simple strategy shift. As British resistance stiffened, the Indians adapted. They started by asking politely with the moderates' constitutional appeals. When that failed, they began to protest loudly with the extremists, Swadeshi Movement, and boycotts. And when that still wasn't enough, they chose to fight fiercely with the armed rebellion of the revolutionaries. This intense escalation perfectly sets the stage for the final phase of your syllabus, the Gandhian era, where completely new concepts like satyagraha and the horrifying tragedy of the Jallianwala Bagh massacre would redefine the movement forever. Remember, history isn't just a bunch of dead words on a page. It's about real people making massive, dangerous choices. So I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought. Based on everything we've just covered, if you were a student living right in the middle of 1905, during the Partition of Bengal, which group strategy would you have joined? Think about it. You now have the complete hacker blueprint for Chapter 18. You know the traps, you've got the mnemonics, and you know the exact points the examiners want to see. Now, take a breath, go out there, and absolutely crush that board exam. Here is our game plan, a high-yield roadmap for today's explainer. First, we tackle the Caliphate and non-cooperation movements. Second, the civil disobedience movement. Third, the Quit India movement. And wrapping it up with the farmers, laborers, and tribal revolts. Master these 4 pillars, and you're pretty much invincible against those heavy-weightage board questions. Let's get to it. All right, Part 1, the Spark of Unity. This is where the Caliphate and non-cooperation movements kick things off. Before we get bogged down in the details, I want to hand you the ultimate exam memory trick to keep your timeline completely straight. To keep these major events in perfect chronological order, just remember the NCQ sequence. Think, never concede quickly. N for non-cooperation in 1920, C for civil disobedience in 1930, and Q for quit India in 1942. Toss the Khilafat movement right at the starting line in 1919, and boom, you have permanently anchored the most critical dates of this chapter in your brain.
So let's break down a super frequent two-mark question, the Caliphate movement. During World War I, the British were harassing the Sultan of Turkey, who was widely considered the religious leader or caliph of Muslims worldwide. To protest this, two leaders in India, the Ali brothers, Muhammad and Shaukat Ali, kicked off the Caliphate movement in 1919. Now here is the absolute strategic genius you must write down for full marks. Gandhiji saw this as a golden opportunity. He knew that the British could only be pushed out if Hindus and Muslims fought together. So the Congress fully supported the Caliphate movement, creating this massive, united Hindu-Muslim front.
Building right on that incredible unity, in 1920, Gandhiji launched the non-cooperation movement. Okay, mental highlighters out, everyone. If you get a long answer question asking to list the programs of the non-cooperation movement, these exact points are your ticket to a perfect score. Students literally walked out of British schools and colleges. Lawyers boycotted the courts. People completely ignored the regional elections under the 1919 Act. They even handed back prestigious British honors, and definitely make sure to drop the fact that Rabindranath Tagore returned his knighthood. Finally, they threw foreign clothes into massive bonfires and fiercely protested the Prince of Wales' visit in 1921.
So, if the movement was going so well, why did it just abruptly end? Let's do a quick step-by-step breakdown of the Choti Chota incident in 1922. Imagine the scene. Step 1. Thousands of people are holding a totally peaceful protest in Choti Chota, Uttar Pradesh. Step 2. Out of nowhere, the police use force and start firing unprovoked at the crowd. Step 3. The police realize they've run out of ammo, panic, and barricade themselves inside the station. Step 4. The crowd, absolutely enraged at this point, retaliates by torching the station, burning 22 policemen alive. Because Gandhiji was so strictly committed to nonviolence, this terrifying escalation is exactly why he immediately called off the entire non-cooperation movement.
Moving right along to Phase 2, Strategic Defiance. Entered the civil disobedience movement. Whoa, stop right there. I need to sound the alarm on a massive exam trap. Examiners absolutely love catching students on this. Do not, under any circumstances, mix up what triggered these two different movements. The non-cooperation movement of 1920, that was fueled by the anger over the Khilafat issue and the horrific Jallianwala Bagh massacre. But the civil disobedience movement, a whole decade later in 1930, that was triggered specifically because Viceroy Irvin flat-out rejected an 11-point charter of demands from Gandhi. The most famous of those rejected demands was wiping out the ridiculously unfair tax on salt. Lock that difference in and keep your marks safe. And you can see exactly how Gandhiji responded to that arrogant rejection. Picture this historical moment. Gandhiji and a dedicated group of followers walking entirely on foot, mile after mile, all the way from the Sabarmati ashram to the crashing waves of the Dandi seashore in Surat. What was the goal of this exhausting trek? To illegally boil seawater and produce salt, actively breaking the British salt law. This singular defiant act officially launched the civil disobedience movement in 1930, and it's immortalized in history as the epic Dandi March. Now, you want to make your answer sheet pop and practically force the evaluator to give you an A+? Drop in some super specific regional facts. Did you know that a teenager, an 18-year-old kid from Karnataka named Mailara Mahadevappa, actually marched alongside Gandhiji at Dandi? It's incredible. On top of that, local leaders in Karnataka like Gangadhan Deshpande and Karnad Sadashiva Rao organized their very own illegal salt production at Ankola Taluk in the Karwar district. Seriously, throwing in localized details like Mailara's age or Ankola Taluk proves you know this material inside out.
All right, things are really heating up now. Part 3, the explosive climax, the Quit India movement.
Fast forward to 1942. World War II is literally tearing the globe apart. The British had just sent the Stafford Cripps Commission to India, basically offering these weak, minor concessions like dominion status, just to keep Indians quiet during the war. The Congress looked at it and completely rejected it. Patience had officially run out. On August 8, 1942, there was this massive, dramatic shift in tone. Gandhiji delivered an ultimate ultimatum using just 3 incredibly powerful words: do or die. He was totally done asking for compromises. He was demanding the British pack up and leave. That single quote was the spark that ignited the nationwide Quit India movement.
Naturally, the British panicked. They instantly threw all the top-tier leaders, Gandhiji, Nehru, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, straight into jail. But here's the crazy part. The movement didn't die. When the big names vanished behind bars, a new wave of leaders stepped out of the shadows. You absolutely have to mention Jayaprakash Narayan in any Quit India answer. As a fiery leader of the Congress's socialist wing, he and his allies took the reins. They formed this underground network called the Freedom Struggle Front to secretly train workers, funnel funds, and give a unified revolutionary direction to the whole scattered movement.
To prove you understand just how intense things got at the grassroots level in 42, let's talk about the mind-blowing Essur incident. Essur is this small village near Shikaripura. Step 1, the villagers bravely declared their town Swatantrahali, literally a free village, banning British officials from even entering. Step 2, when officials tried to push their way in anyway, the villagers forced them to put on Gandhi caps. Step 3, a furious police sub-inspector ends up opening fire on the unarmed crowd. Step 4, the villagers completely snap, fight back, and end up killing him. Telling this specific micro-story shows examiners that you don't just know the big national politics, you understand the fierce, raw rebellion happening in the villages.
Finally, we reach section 4, the backbone. We're talking about the farmers, laborers, and tribal revolts.
Okay, I highly recommend grabbing a mental screenshot of this cheat sheet right here. Examiners go crazy for regional protests, and students usually mix these up. If you get hit with a 3-mark or 5-mark question, just recreate this exact pairing. In Champaranya, farmers took on European planters over forced indigo farming. Down in Telangana, they fought against the wealthy Andhra Reddy landlords and the Nizam's brutal Razak militia. Over in Bengal, it was a massive revolt against exploitation by the zamindars. In Maharashtra, farmers boldly protested terrible wages. And let's not forget the tribal movements. Across countless tribal regions, indigenous communities fiercely rebelled against the British for slapping on oppressive forest laws and heavy taxes that were destroying their ancient way of life. Many of these farmer and grassroots protests actually organized together under the banner of the Kisan Sabha. Putting all these pieces together in an answer is pure exam gold. And we absolutely cannot forget the factory workers. Let's quickly blast through these final high-yield facts on the laborers' revolts. You just need to pair the industry with the city. The printers' union in Calcutta was huge for spreading national awareness. Meanwhile, the thousands of cotton mill workers in Bombay organized massive strikes to back the independence movement. Down south, a major, highly effective labor union was founded in Madras. And the really important takeaway here, the Indian National Congress actually supported these unions, brilliantly linking the daily struggles of the common factory worker directly to the grand fight for national freedom.
Which brings us to one final provocative question. Think about the epic narrative we've just built together. From the unity of Khilafat to the salty shores of Dandi to the defiant Swatantrahali of Essur. Without the unstoppable, totally snowballing momentum of everyday farmers, laborers, tribal communities, and students, would elite politicians sitting at negotiating tables have ever achieved India's freedom on their own? That massive, grassroots momentum of resistance, that is the true heartbeat of Chapter 18. I hope this explainer has completely demystified these events for you. Keep this NCQ timeline in your head, dodge those exam traps, and you are going to utterly crush those board exams. Happy studying and go hack that test.
Here's our battle plan for your answer sheet today. 1. Bose in the INA. 2. Ambedkar's social revolution. 3. Nehru's socialist shift. And 4. Jinnah and the partition. All right, let's dive right in.
Starting off with Section 1, Bose and the INA, the radical strategist. Okay, listen up and grab your pens, because our first historical architect is an absolute examiner's favorite. We're talking about a massive 4-mark question here. To really get Subhash Chandra Bose, you have to understand his intense commitment. Get this, he actually secured the 4th rank in the super prestigious Indian Civil Services exam, but then he just flat out rejected the post in the British service. No way was he doing that. Instead, he took a radical, militaristic approach to freedom. You've probably heard his famous, powerful call to arms. Give me blood, I will give you freedom. He absolutely believed an armed struggle was the only real way out. Now, if you get a question on Netaji's role in the freedom struggle, you need to list these exact value points straight from the exam key. Think of his journey like an action movie. First, he fiercely opposes British war preparations and gets himself arrested. Then, he escapes house arrest, travels across borders, and reaches Germany, where he actually gains the dictator Hitler's support.
From there, he starts organizing Indian war criminals into an army and broadcasts these fiery speeches over Azad Hind radio. Back home, he'd already formed the Forward Bloc Party after splitting from the Congress. Eventually, he takes over the leadership of the Indian National Army, or the INA, and under him there was even a dedicated ladies' wing, the Jhansi Regiment, commanded by Captain Lakshmi. Finally, he plans this massive military strategy through Rangoon to capture Delhi, giving that famous call, Delhi Chalo. Seriously, memorize these 8 points, rate them down clearly, and boom, you've secured your 4 marks.
All right, watch out for this massive trap because students almost always lose marks here. Please do not confuse the two Boses. Remember that Rashbihari Bose, who had been a fugitive in Japan, is the one who originally established the military wing in Tokyo after a conference in Bangkok. But, and this is the key, he later handed over the leadership of the INA to Subhash Chandra Bose. Keep that distinction crystal clear for your objective-type questions, okay? Don't let them trick you.
Moving on to Section 2, Ambedkar's Social Revolution, the Social Architect.
So shifting gears from military strategy to our social foundation, this is another really high-weightage topic. Examiners absolutely love to see this exact quote in your long-form answers. Political freedom without social freedom is meaningless. The absolutely crucial takeaway here is that Dr. B.R. Ambedkar believed that if a person from the lowest classes didn't get social and economic freedom, well, political freedom from the British was just a mirage. It wasn't real. He didn't see India just as a political entity, you know? He saw it as a living society that desperately needed internal curing from the deeply hierarchical caste system. Let's completely whiteboard his logical sequence of actions to eradicate untouchability. I want you to imagine drawing a staircase. Step 1 is right at the grassroots level. He organized the Mahad movement to secure the right for untouchables to use public lake water, and the Kalara movement for temple entry. Then, step 2 moves up to the international stage. He attended all 3 roundtable conferences in London to demand rights and separate electorates, famously declaring himself the true voice of the depressed classes. Finally, step 3 is the absolute pinnacle. Serving as the chairman of the Constitution Draft Committee, re-ensured legal protection against the practice of untouchability, officially making it a crime.
Ambedkar once said, "A leader without newspapers is like a bird without wings." So he published several periodicals to spread awareness. I'm going to give you a super simple memory trick right now to lock this in for the exam. People join making Bharat. Just remember that. It'll instantly lock the initials PJMB into your brain. Prabudha Bharatha, Janata, Mukh Nayaka, and Bahishkruta Bharatha. Literally write "People join making Bharat" in the margins of your exam paper as soon as you sit down, and I promise you will never forget these 4 essential newspapers.
Up next is Section 3, Nehru's Socialist Shift, the Political Shifter.
Let's see how our third architect, Jawaharlal Nehru, built the political framework of independent India. Now, his strategies weren't static at all. They actually evolved a ton over time, and you need to track this evolution carefully. He starts off as the president of the 1929 Lahore Convention, declaring the big goal of Purna Swaraj, or complete independence. Then by 1934, strongly influenced by communist ideologies, he actually teams up with Subhash Chandra Bose to establish the Congress Socialist Party. At the 49th Convention, he even distances himself a bit from Gandhiji's methods, arguing that the Charkha and Harijan movements just weren't effective enough. But then, notice the shift. By the 50th Convention, he adopts a softer approach, declaring the fight is really for democracy, not just socialism. And finally, post-independence, he architects India's foreign policy by championing the non-alignment policy, which was based on the Panchasheel principles of peace and harmony. It's a total evolution.
Bringing us to Section 4, Jinnah and the Partition, the Divided Strategist. Our fourth historical figure is Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Understanding his political trajectory is absolutely key to understanding how the geopolitical map was ultimately redrawn. Now, it's a super common misconception that Jinnah always wanted division. Not true. In fact, he started his career as the private secretary to Dadabhai Naoroji, joined the Congress in 1906, and even successfully defended nationalist leaders like Tilak in court. Right through 1916, he was a massive advocate for Hindu-Muslim unity. However, the critical turning point, and the one you must write about in your exam, is 1937. When the Congress and the Muslim League failed to form a coalition government after the elections, his whole strategy completely shifted. By 1940, at the Lahore session, his stance had hardened into a strict demand for a completely separate nation.
Which leads right into Section 5, Partition of India, the final move.
This ideological friction between a united India and the demand for Pakistan brings us to our final, highly testable historical outcome.
I want you to imagine a clock ticking rapidly down to independence. You will absolutely see timeline questions on this exact sequence, so let's lock it in. 1940, Jinnah declares Hindus and Muslims cannot make one nation, at that Lahore session we just talked about. Then, post-World War II, the new Labour Party in Britain wants to solve the Indian political problem, so they send over the cabinet mission. By March 1946, Lord Mountbatten arrives as viceroy with the specific goal of transferring power, leading to intense talks with Gandhi and Jinnah. This all culminates in the India Independence Bill being passed in July 1947. And finally, on August 15, 1947, the two independent nations are born.
Now, to totally nail those one-mark objective questions, you have to perfectly match these British entities to their exact roles. The Labour Party was the government in power over in the UK. The cabinet mission? They were sent to suggest a federal form of government. Lord Mountbatten was the viceroy who actually framed the specific plan to divide India. And crucially, the Radcliffe Commission is the body that literally drew the lines on the map and marked the physical boundaries between India and Pakistan. Do not mix these up on exam day.
All right, you've just powered through the absolute most important, high-yield material from Chapter 18. But hey, just watching isn't enough. Active recall is how you actually ace the boards. Before you close this explainer, I want you to test yourself right now. Seriously, pause the explainer right here. Can you write down 3 strategies used by Subhash Chandra Bose and 3 steps taken by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar without looking at your notes? If you can, you are incredibly well prepared. Keep reviewing the strategy guide, trust in your hard work, and walk into that exam hall ready to score top marks. You've got this. See you in the next explainer.